Welcome to Chapter 11, Intro to HTML and CSS. So we've just begun a new part of the course and opened up notebook number 11. So our goal for this chapter is to learn the fundamentals of HTML and CSS to create a dashboard. Now, the topics of HTML and CSS are very grand and can easily fill several volumes of text. So what we want to do in this chapter is to really focus on these fundamentals and basics so that when we get to the dashboard creation in the next chapter, we can feel comfortable and confident using HTML and CSS to do whatever it takes in order to create that dashboard. All right, so this is part 1, HTML elements. Before we talk about the elements, we're going to discuss what HTML and CSS actually are. So HTML is a language used to describe the components of a web page. So what we're looking at right now is a web page. All Jupyter notebooks are rendered in your web browser as a web page. So everything you see here is a component. Like this piece of text is one particular component. This text is another component. This link over here is a separate component. If you look up here, we have different buttons. These are components of a web page. We have drop-down menus. These are different components of a web page. So that's what HTML is. It's a language that is describing each component of the page. Now CSS is a separate and different language, and it's used to arrange and add style to the components. So say this piece of text right here, CSS can make the text larger, it can change the color of the text, it can change the font of the text, it can change the background color of the text. There are many, many things that CSS can control. Now it can also arrange the elements on a web page. So we can put elements, say for example, these buttons up here from left to right. We can put them vertically up and down. We can space them out by different, by different amounts. So CSS controls the arrangement and styling of the page, while HTML is the actual physical components that you see. Now the other piece of the puzzle is the web browser, so such as Firefox, or Google Chrome or Safari, and the web browser is responsible for interpreting the HTML and CSS and then rendering it as the web page that you see. So all web browsers will take this raw HTML and CSS and then render it as a web page. Okay, so let's go deeper into HTML elements. So all HTML is composed of elements. So when you look at the code, every single thing is an element. Now, each element has a specific tag, and that's a name surrounded by angle brackets. Now, before we get too deep in here, I want to point out these MDN web docs. So this is provided by Mozilla and is a great way to learn web development, and it will cover a lot of the topics that we do in our HTML class, our HTML notebooks. So if you want to get a different perspective, you can navigate to these MDN web docs and take a look over here. Okay, so here's some common HTML elements and their tags. So for instance, this is the paragraph. This is how you create paragraphs of text, is with the angle brackets, and then the name is the letter P over here. So this represents a paragraph of text. H1, H2 all the way to H6 represent headers, so from the largest down to the smallest. The A tag is the anchor tag, and it creates a clickable hyperlink. This is the image tag, unordered and ordered lists, list elements which go inside these lists, table elements, div for logical division of content. So each of these elements, and these are just some of the most common ones, will be discussed in detail in other upcoming sections. Okay, so let's take a look at the actual code used to create an element. So if we look at this image, now this whole thing is an element, and it's a paragraph element. So from here to here. Now this is an element that has an opening tag and a closing tag. So most elements have both opening and closing tags. Some just have an opening tag. Now notice the closing tag has a slash in it right before the name so that we know that it is a closing tag. Now what goes in between the opening and closing tag is the content. So that's called the content. So this is the full element, and in particular of the paragraph element. Now, there's also something you can do within each opening tag, and that's to add attributes. So elements can have any number of attributes, and you can think of these as function parameters that change the behavior of that element. So function parameters in the sense of like from Python. So here we have a class attribute, and it's set equal to the string editor-note, and all attributes will appear in the opening tag, not in the closing tag. So they all have to appear in the opening tag. So different elements can have different attributes. Now there's two classes of attributes. There's global and element specific attributes. So the global attributes, these are available to every single HTML element. So they are in common with all of them. So there are a certain set of attributes that every element can use, and class is one of them, and so is ID. These are the most common ones, so we'll see that in a little bit. But there's also element-specific attributes, and we'll see some of those down below, such as href when we're creating a anchor tag. So these are the hyperlinks, and href provides where the link will lead to, like the actual web page. So you need to be aware of these, global and element-specific. Now there's some elements that only are called empty elements, so they do not have a closing tag. So there's only a subset of elements. The majority have opening and closing tags, but a few are empty elements and they only have an opening tag. So there's no content, there's no closing tag, but they can still have attributes. So here an image tag is an example of an element that has only an opening tag, and it has, in this case, we're showing one of its attributes, which is src, the source of where the image is located. And so that is one of the other types of tags. Okay, so that is an introduction to HTML elements. This image really nicely summarizes it, and particularly with the attribute as well. So what we'll do in the following sections is we're going to cover all of these HTML elements, and then we will write quite a bit of HTML as well.